President Traore is standing up. He is saying the natural resources in Burkina Faso, they belong to the people of Burkina Faso. Niger is doing the same thing. Mali is doing the same thing. Every leader must look at what's happening in the Sahel nations. This is a wake-up call for the African leaders. To the same extent that President Trump is saying USA first, African leaders must also say Africa first. You have everything you need to take care of your people. Why do you continue to be beggars? Africans must take a position and protect their turf. We still have leaders who believe you can't make it unless you're working with white people. With that kind of mentality, it is a very difficult battle. Our battle to succeed, to unite as the African continent, it is a battle of the mind. And each and every African must realize that we are defeated where it matters the most. Africa must unite. Africa must speak with one voice, and Africa must go to the world stage with one voice, one agenda, one plan that the world will have to respond. But as long as Africa is going to the world as bitty little countries, as Togo, as Eswatini, as Guinea-Bissau, Africa is fighting a losing game. And why does Africa need them? Why do we need them? Africa has been the provider. If you look at Europe, Europe cannot survive without Africa. Why does such a continent that did so much to help Europe recover continue to be so poor? Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop.
Now that Donald Trump have decided to cut off all the USAID all over around the world, Africa remained the most impacted. What kind of impact will it have on Africa? Humanitarian assistance, infrastructure support, medicine and food programs. These are very important support for countries such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, which receive about 1.3 billion US dollar each and every year. Ethiopia, which gets about 1.2 billion US dollar. Sudan gets about 800 million US dollar. And the other major part of this aid goes to Nigeria, to South Sudan, Kenya, Mozambique, Uganda, Lesotho, and more countries in Africa continent. With all this being said, some are saying, regardless of this support from the USAID, it is something which the USAID have been using for many years in order for them to keep controlling the African politics. With the HIV AIDS, they said this had become even more political. And this is something which is even holding Africa economic growth. Some they say we need the USAID support more than ever, as much the US need Africa continent.
America needs South Africa. South Africa needs America. If we don't work together, both of us shall lose. But South Africa shall lose more. People are going to die. HIV/AIDS is going to kill our people. I'm coming here today. If you hate America, that's fine. If you think this is about Donald Trump, that's even fine. But this is not about Donald Trump. This is about the 230,000 people that will be out of a job. This is about the people that will be dying. I'm not here. I don't care what you feel. Don't lie me here. You have medical aid. You have free medical aid. You have free state medical aid. You come here. Hi.
And there are those who believe that this is about time the US to leave Africa alone.
The world must move forward without the USA if true progress is to be achieved. We are not the puppets of the USA. We will never be bullied by Donald Trump and his friends. South Africa remains an independent state, which is not handled by the USA. Foreign aid has always been a tool for Western imperialism and control. It must end with South Africa. We must expand our trade and strengthen relationship with China, India, Russia, Brazil, and Singapore, while emphasizing African unity. The USA is on a full mission to extort the world into submission, and as a result will become increasingly isolated. Our sovereignty, security, and economic prosperity on rejecting the American Golden Age, a project of imperialism.
This USAID, it was initiated by the US government back then for many years. They came up with this idea without being put a gun on their face. And they chose to support people of the world, especially people of Africa continent. But what was their mission behind all of this? Why did they come up with these ideas? And today, why are they taking it again away from people of Africa? That is the capital question, which we need to discuss with you in this video in order for us to understand what is the secret behind all this removal of this USAID. With all this being said, there is one person who gets to give the proper answer that people of the world, people of Africa continent deserve to hear. And here we're talking about this African ambassador to the United Nations, Arikana Chihombori-Quao, who have to give a very powerful message when she said that
there is need for readjustments. There is need for realignment. We need to understand the real reason why USAID is in Africa. And not just USAID, but other NGOs. You look at DFID, which is the British equivalent, and many other smaller ones. Their sole purpose was to act as if they're coming to rescue Africa. They're coming to fill in the gaps in government services, gaps in education, gaps in healthcare, gaps in humanitarian services. They're coming in the guise of addressing issues to do with human rights, issues to do with environmental protection and social justice. They are coming in claiming that they're introducing grassroots initiatives that are going to help the people. And so they use that as a way to go into the most remote parts of Africa. They're talking about government advocacy. When you look at it on paper, it all looks really good, but they're actually wolf in sheep's clothing. They are using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID. I was listening to a program, I believe it was CNN, and I was jumping up and down. It was a government official from Hungary. He was echoing the same sentiments. He said they are happy USAID is leaving Hungary because they are always supporting opposition. Their form of government advocacy is supporting whoever can keep the government in a turmoil.
Does she lie? No, I'll tell you why. Because knowing the USA foreign policy very well, what they usually do each and every time when they are in need, or when they want to invade a nation, or when they want to take down a world leader, they don't attack you directly. They'll find a reason on how they can get inside your nation, on how they will get inside your country affairs or your economy in order for them to succeed with their mission. They can use any tool possible, including even your own neighbors, in order for them to neutralize you. And looking at how these women have explained these matters, you can only tell that yes, exactly, there was a very big secret that motivated the USA in order for them to come up with this AID in Africa continent, so that they'll be able to benefit something in return in Africa continent. But this seems to be a message which most of Americans, they don't seem to understand. Do you know why? Because for them, they believe that no, this USAID, it has been there to help people of Africa to fight against HIV, AIDS, and to fight against corruption, so to help them to develop their country by building different manufacturers, and to help those ones who are dying out of famine, so that they will be able to have something to put on the table. But that's not the truth, because the message behind that, it is something else which has nothing to do with what they're trying to show us on their screens.
But quite a few of them are also operatives who are underground, and their major agenda is to destabilize governments, destabilize countries. If you think about it, their sole purpose, for example, filling in the gaps in healthcare and education. Where is the change? Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The social services they're bringing, it's peanuts. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people.
This is a very capital question. I think we should use against each and everyone who's trying to convince people of Africa, saying that no, this USAID, it is very important for people of Africa. Then we should ask them a simple question to know, what does this USAID help for people of Africa? Can they show us one school which they have built, and we can say that this one comes from the money which the USA usually donate to Africans? Or can they show us different manufacturers or that they have put in place, and we can say that this one is coming from the USA? Because we all know that these people, their major problem or point which they have put in place, it is for them to come in with these excuses of saying that we are coming to help Africans, yet they are there to destabilize government. They are there to bring even more conflict. Look what has been happening in Mali. Look what's been happening in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and the whole entire Sahel regions. These are the same people who are busy sponsoring these terrorists and giving them weapons, and at the same time, they want to jump in the front line to come and tell you that, no, we're here to put peace in your country. So it is their strategies. Yeah, I know you come and tell me that, no, what about the HIV/AIDS? Because this man has been helping people who are sick of HIV so that they can be able to get the medicine. Wow. Do you think that is something that you need to buy? No. Do you know why? Because we all know what happened in South Africa with this USAID.
Let's look at what HIV/AIDS was used to do. We know of a program that was run out of South Africa where they actually were injecting people with the virus. The reason some of the AIDS virus spread as rapidly as it did in Southern Africa, there were some very dirty games being played on African people. They were using Africans as guinea pigs for experimental activities. Even when you look at every aspect, they're using us as guinea pigs. Yes, there is some good, a percentage of some good, but not all of it is done with good intentions. You look at agriculture, they're destroying African agriculture by introducing those GMOs. You plant your seed in one season, your soil is finished. We used to have seeds that we can use from one season to the other. The introduction of GMOs through these agencies, USAID is one of them. We're destroying Africa in a massive way. A little good is coming out, but by and large, the end result, they mean no good. They can turn around and give us an inventory and say, as long as you have been in Africa and also other parts of the world, show us your success rate. You claim you're helping governments with education and healthcare. Show us your success rate. But I also turn around and say, African governments, why do you need this little aid to assist you in providing proper healthcare, proper education? The average African government can afford to provide those services for their people.
Fellas, let us not beat around the bush. There is nothing good coming from this USAID. Why? Because we know very well that these people, they never mean to do good for African people. These people that are jealous of Africa, for them in their mind, they even want to perish the whole entire Africans all over in Africa continent, so that they will come and take over and stay in. And people already have this kind of intentions. They'll do everything in their power to make sure that they eliminate you one by one. That is the reason why they are even going to the point of giving you guys some product and saying that, no, go and use it in your agricultures so that your food will look like this and like that. But when we take a look on what our scientists, they are showing us, on what our Africans, true Pan-Africans who are telling us the history of Africa soil. We all know that Africa soil was so blessed in everything besides our mineral resources. We know that it is only in Africa where you can plant something and this food is gonna grow up with the natural manure without you using any kind of chemical manure. in order for you to grow up this food. These people believe that they are much better than Africans. They believe that their head is everything to Africans. But now that they have taken it away, let's see if Africans won't be able to survive. Let's see the difference of what's going to happen. But guys, besides this USAID support from the USA, do you think is there other something good that Africans can do? Or do Africans have to continue depending on other world aid support each and every time when they feel like doing something for Africans? Because when you look very well, you will see that Europe, they are also the first one to jump in the front line to show how they want to support people of Africa. But do Africa really need the support from Europeans?
Why does Africa need them? Why do we need them? Africa has been the provider. If you look at Europe, Europe cannot survive without Africa. One situation that people don't realize, post-World War, when the US came up with the Marshall Plan, what they don't tell you is that the contribution through exploitation of African minerals was actually the biggest funder of the European Recovery Plan, ERP, aka the Marshall Plan. US contributed $13 billion, which is now present day $175 billion, which, by the way, the American taxpayer must be paid back. Nobody's asking for that money back. But what they don't tell you is that Africa, through exploitation of its resources by the Europeans, was actually a much, much bigger contribution to the European recovery post-World War II. Nobody talks about that. Why does such a continent that did so much to help Europe recover continue to be so poor? Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop. Africa has everything it needs. If Africa could have contributed as much as it did to the recovery of Europe post-World War II, why wasn't Africa equally developed?
The question is, what next now for Africa continent? Now that the US decided to cut all this aid ID, what next can make Africans? Are we just going to sit and cross our hands, or are we going to try to do something which the US, they can also feel that actually Africa, they're not that stupid as we think. We have everything. It is a mineral resources, natural resources, name it, because the list is too long. But with all these things that we have in our possession as Africans, how can we use it in order for us to make these people respect people of Africa? That it is the question which we deserve a proper answer. Donald Trump comes and said that the United States of America first. America first. Can we also do the same by putting Africa first before the West get to finish everything that left of Africans?
This is a wake-up call for the African leaders. To the same extent that President Trump is saying USA first, African leaders must also say Africa first. This is a wake-up call to the African leaders to take inventory of what is really happening in their countries. Do they really need the peanuts that are coming in as aid? What is really going out? If I may use the example of what happened in Niger when the government decided they were going to take over the mining of their uranium. The French companies that were mining the uranium were paying the government 80 cents a kilo for the uranium, and then turning around and selling the uranium to the rest of the world at 200 euros a kilo. So that one move from the Nigerian government to say we are now going to take ownership of our own uranium, they went from realizing about $1 billion in uranium resources to over 300 billion a year. Do you realize what I'm talking about? No amount of NGO could bring that kind of money. And this is only one mineral. Now imagine the country taking inventory of all their minerals and benefiting from their natural resources like the rest of the countries in the Western world.
And this is what pains the most. This is what I call a betrayal for our African leaders, because they know very well that as Africa, in Africa continent, we have something very powerful, something unique which the world needs today. Yet these African leaders, they are not able to make use of it. Yet people of Africa, they are not benefiting from all these mineral resources. It has to be some other Western countries like France or British who have to come and impose the price of the African minerals. At what price you have to sell it, which country you will have to also to sell it to. Imagine such kind of things. But what I like about all this is that today things have changed around, because when other African leaders are shaking, when they want to still depending on the American aids, when they still want to listen to Europeans and Americans, well, there are those ones who have the courage to stand out, to come and say that no, we don't want with our minerals, they'll have to stay here. And here we're talking about countries such as Burkina Faso with Ibrahim Traore, and Niger and Mali.
We need to look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. President Traore is standing up. He is saying the natural resources in Burkina Faso, they belong to the people of Burkina Faso. Niger is doing the same thing. Mali is doing the same thing. Every leader must look at what's happening in the Sahel nations to say, like anybody else, you must take care of your people. You have your natural resources. You have everything you need to take care of your people. Why do you continue to be beggars? Look at what is being brought in by not only USAID, but all the NGOs in your country. It's peanuts. It's a joke that the African leaders should continue to be beggars of peanuts when you are looking and allowing billions to get out of your country year in and year out, if not trillions, in natural resources that your people should be benefiting from. It is a wake-up call for African leaders to wake up and say, President Trump is saying, US first, America first. You too must say, your country first, because you have everything it takes. It is a joke. It is embarrassing to see I have not seen any African leader cry over USAID living. I can tell you for a fact, the average African leader privately is celebrating the exit of USAID because they know what is really going on.
Oh yes, it is indeed possible. It is indeed possible for African leaders to put Africa first as much Donald Trump chose to put America first. It is possible for African leaders to say no to the looting of African minerals by the Western country. It is possible for us to stop all this nonsense which has been going on for so many years, because we also deserve better as much they do want to have it all. Guys, Donald Trump never cared for African countries. He never showed any remorse to the people of Africa. Instead, he even disrespected Africans by calling them names. And this man, he will never gonna care, not even a little bit, about Africa continent. So he never wanted to be in a good relationship with Africa. Why should African countries or African leaders have to go and force this kind of relationship? When someone does not want you, the only thing you can do, which is good for you, is to also walk away, go and find someone better. So do Africans even need to keep the relationship between Africa continent and the USA? I don't think so. Do you know why?
Really shouldn't care about a relationship either. If the relationship can be worked out, that's wonderful. But if President Trump is saying, I have a mandate from my own people to take care of my people, and I'm doing what I need to do to take care of my people, African leaders need to take that same position. You see, it takes two to tango. If President Trump does not want a relationship with Africa, Africans shouldn't be begging for it. Are you with me? I'm hoping that this will translate into African leaders looking from within, because they don't really need to keep looking outside. They have what it takes. It's a wake-up call, just like what happened during COVID. It was a wake-up call for African leaders to realize that you must begin to look within Africa to take care of yourself. When the chips were down, the world walked away from Africa during COVID. So that's a reality. No supplies were coming to Africa. Africans were not manufacturing anything, and African leaders were forced to look from within. This, I'm hoping, is another wake-up call where African leaders also begin to realize we must look from within. But let me underscore this. The average African leader and majority of leaders of developing world, I can tell you, they are celebrating the exit of USAID, and we hope that there will be exits of many other NGOs that are carrying out nefarious activities in Africa and anywhere else in the developing world in order to further the agendas of their governments, which is to continuously destabilize, divide, and conquer.
This is a wake-up call for Africa continent. This should be a wake-up call for Africans all over around the world, for African leaders to understand that it is about time to isolate themselves from the USA. The relationship between the US and the Western countries, it does not benefit people of Africa. And therefore, we don't need to keep this kind of people as our friends, because all they do is to see Africa as a golden mining, where they will have to come in the morning, steal from Africans, and in the weekend to go ahead and relax with their family somewhere in Las Vegas, where they will be building and doing different activities over there, enjoying their life even more freely. So Africans don't need this kind of relationship. But on the other side, we're having China, we're having Russia. These countries, should we consider them as the rightful partners that Africa needs right now? Well, I think that is the question. I'm leaving it to you. Feel free to drop your comment in the comment section and tell us what do you think about it. But as for Madam Arikana, she said this.
My position is Africans must take a position and protect their turf. China wants to come and exploit Africa. They'll get away with it to the extent that Africans allow them. The United States wants to come and exploit Africa. They'll get away with it to the extent that the Africans will allow them. The question is, does Africa have an African position when they come to the negotiating table with the world? The answer right now is no. Africa must unite. Africa must speak with one voice, and Africa must go to the world stage with one voice, one agenda, one plan that the world will have to respond. But as long as Africa is going to the world as bitty little countries, as Togo, as Eswatini, as Guinea-Bissau, Africa is fighting a losing game. Africa must unite, and Africa must speak with one voice. That is the only way a strong, united Africa can take a rightful place on the world stage and be respected and stop the exploitation.
Why is it so hard?
I think it's a long history. If you go back to colonization, if you go back to the Christianity and how it was introduced, how we were trained to be subservient. In Africa, the rules of the game were the same. I think that what was done to brainwash Black people around the world, long before they even left Africa, we are still suffering from that legacy of colonization, the legacy of slavery, where the people in power, they themselves don't believe they can do it. We still have leaders who believe you can't make it unless you're working with white people. We have individuals who think only something brought in by white people is what's likely to succeed. With that kind of mentality, it is a very difficult battle. Our battle to succeed, to unite as the African continent, it is a battle of the mind. And each and every African must realize that we are defeated where it matters the most, which is the mind. Brainwashed to the core. Brainwashed to not believe in ourselves and what we can do as individuals.
Now you understand the reason why we keep on preaching for the unity of Africa continent. When we speak here day and night calling for African to be united, some think that we are stupid. Some even call us names. Some can even say that, no, we don't know what we're talking about, because maybe they believe they are so special and unique from other African countries. But forgetting that us fighting this battle as a separate countries within Africa continent, which is our motherland, it is like fighting a loser war, which you know very well that you are not going to come out as the winner. We've been fighting a losing war against the Western for so many years. Why? Because we are going to this war all divided. And when these people come, they attack one of the African country. The other African countries, they just keep quiet. And they're not getting even to interfere in those affairs, forgetting that tomorrow they'll be the next on the list of these two Western countries. These people knew very well that in order for us to continue controlling Africans, in order for us to continue stealing from African minerals, in order for us to continue dominating our policy on Africans, it is by dividing them. That is when they came and imposed borders on Africans.
The whole of Southern Africa, which was colonized by one person, Cecil John Rose, he managed the whole SADC alone. Why are we failing to manage the whole SADC ourselves? Not through colonialism, by providing services to them, by allowing free movements of goods and persons, and by allowing one African passport. People say, Malema says, borderless Africa, he wants people without documents. How can he want people without documents when he's got documents himself? The division of our continent benefit the imperialist forces. Let's continue to advocate for the unity of Africans and for academic excellence.
They came with all these borders because they knew exactly what they were doing. And when they were sitting somewhere in Berlin in 1840, dividing Africa like a piece of cake on someone's birthday, Africans, they were not there. Africans, they were not seated on that table. They did all this on their own. Why? Because they knew that 100 years or 2,000 years to come, these borders that we have imposed on Africans, it will help us to continue controlling them from far. How can you win this battle when we still have countries within another country such as Lesotho, Swaziland, Togo, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda? All these small countries, when we're supposed just to be one nation. If you look the map very well, what makes the United Nations to be very strong? It is also because they remain united. So why Africa can't do the same? Guys, for me, I think this is a wake-up call for Africans.
President Trump is saying, I have a mandate, America first. So you Africans, are you going to sit back and just wait and see the next move that President Trump is going to make? Or you're going to also say, I have a mandate from my people, and I'm going to do what I need to do. Take inventory of what you have in your country. Use it and use it wisely. No more begging. You don't need to have anybody filling the gaps in your educational system. You don't need anybody filling the gaps in your healthcare system. You don't need anybody creating initiatives in the most remote parts of your country because they claim that you, the government, cannot have access to that. How can somebody come from all the way from the United States, all the way from Britain, and access the most remote part of your country that you in your country cannot access? It is the most stupid thing. When you listen to the justifications and the explanations as to why they are there, it's a joke, and this needs to stop.
Africans should know that we are on our own. We can't count on anyone else out there. Everyone, they have shown their intentions toward Africans. There's no any other organizations out there who can come and defend Africans, because those organizations which has been there, they have shown their true face, that they are not at the service of people of Africa, but they are at the service of those who have put it in place. So it be the UN, EU, AU, G7, G20, all these world organizations. Trust me, they will never gonna come to the rescue of people of Africa if Africans don't stand on their own feet and try to challenge these people with everything in their power. These all institutions, they are not there to help people of Africa. Do you know why? Because they were created for another reason.
Well, those institutions were created after the Second World War. United Nations, it took 4 weeks to create the United Nations. Why? In order to help the recovery of Europe. The World Bank, the IMF, it took 3 weeks to create them after the Second World War in order to aid in the recovery of Europe from its own self-implosion and destruction. So no, 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 no. These institutions were not created to benefit the developing world. To the contrary, they were built to steal from the developing world. Their success is based on the failures of the developing nations where they have been stealing from. So no, no, no. We must celebrate what President Trump is doing by exiting the United Nations, by exiting the World Health Organization. We need the US to exit the World Trade Organization because they are doing nothing on the African end. They are giving a blind eye to blatant exploitations, unequal, uneven trade policies that are hurting Africa. You take, for example, cocoa. Majority of the cocoa coming out of the world comes from West Africa, and yet it's only recently that African nations were allowed to add value to their cocoa.
So what is my take in all this? Well, guys, again, I'll insist that this should be a wake-up call for Africa. This should be a very strong message to each and every African leaders out there that it is about time we start having another different way of seeing things, another different way of dealing with this Western and the US politics. Why? Because these people, they have shown their real intentions toward people of Africa. For all these years that this USAID, it's been taking place in Africa continent, there is nothing good which has happened. Therefore, now that they decided to pull out, Africans should let go of it. They should not beg them, and they should find a new way to deal with this Western. Donald Trump said America first. African leaders should also be able to say Africa first. Our African leaders should know that we don't need the help of the world organizations or institutions in order for us to liberate ourselves from the Western. African leaders should take a good and fine example set by this young President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso and the leader of Mali or Niger. These people who have dared the Western by chasing them away from their country, by stopping giving them their minerals, and take this mineral and use it or sell it for their own interest, which will benefit for people of their country. African leaders should start also understanding that it is about time we start coming together as one nation instead of us fighting like children from different mothers. But we should understand that we only have one father, which is Africa continent. It is that way we'll be able to win this fight. And if we continue going to this war, fighting against this Western in order for us to liberate ourselves while we are being divided with different ambitions or opinions, trust me, these people will continue winning every time. But the moment we'll come together as one Africa, the moment we'll speak one language, the moment we'll come with one army, the moment we'll have leaders who will be loyal to Africa, who will say that Africa first before anything else, that moment it will be the day everything will change around. We'll be able to gain that our dignity, which we have lost after all these years. Guys, we're looking forward to see also what is your opinion about this conversation that we just have with you. It was very important that we sit down and talk about our beautiful land, which is Africa continent. I really do appreciate your time. Please make sure that you like this video in your numbers so that this message can reach to many African leaders out there so that they can be able to apply whatsoever we are expecting of them to do for us. So stay tuned for more videos like this to come. If this is your first time to watch our videos, feel free to subscribe to the channel and join this big team of Pan-Africans all over around the world so that we can be able to be discussing this kind of matters time to time. I think that will be all for now. Continue to be yourself. Be good, be kind, have respect for everyone in order for you to be respected. May God bless you all. I'll see you again very soon in our next video. Ciao, ciao.